My name is Joe Rothschild, and as Ms. Callahan said, I work here at CDC, do a lot of 508 stuff. Real quick sort of a breakdown on my background. My background is I came from sort of an audio video background, did a lot of TV and video, got into doing e-learning and stuff like that. And from there, went to work for the government. After that, got into doing e-learning. And doing e-learning for the government, one of the things that you need to know is that everything that the government does has to be 508 compliant. So first, disclaimers. This presentation has gone through 216 reviews and by all kinds of CDC people much smarter than I, but I still have to say everything in here is my opinion and does not reflect on the CDC. So that being said, take it with a grain of salt. I kind of know what I'm talking about, but hey, you never know. I'm going to talk about sort of some product names, show some things that are sort of brand names, that sort of stuff. Obviously, all that belongs to the owners of those brands. So let's start with what we're going to learn about. So obviously, I assume most people watching are probably not like programmers. They're not coders. You're not doing HTML and messing with XML, stuff like that. So that's sort of my assumption. My assumption is also that your laboratorians, your health scientists, your people that do work for the government and would like to know how to be 508 compliant. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk a little bit about accessibility, why there's a need for it. I'm going to go over what you can and can't do in order for something to be 508 compliant. Show some examples of what good and bad compliance is, get you some links, and then we're going to actually open up some documents, and I'm going to show you how to make them compliant. So let's get into it. So why accessibility? Well, really the main reason why accessibility, it's the law. Get over it. It's the law. So people with disabilities, they do deserve just as equal of access to content and products as everyone else. It's the law. That's just sort of the way it goes. Stuff that has to be 508 compliant. If you get any money from the government for a product or an item, that has to be 508 compliant. It really doesn't matter the logic of it. A lot of times I hear people say, you know, no one who has a disability is ever going to see this product. This is an e-learning course on open heart surgery. And chances are someone with a visual disability is not going to be doing open heart surgery. Logic doesn't really matter. It has to be 508 compliant. So once again, just sort of deal with it. So if you receive funds, make sure it's 508 compliant. So loopholes. Oh, this is actually, I'm sure why most of you people are here is looking for the loopholes to not make something 508 compliant. So let me hit you with a little analogy. Let's say the police pull you over for going 153 miles per hour in your new $200,000 supercar, because don't we all have those? This $200,000 supercar has better tires, better brakes, better safety. It has all the super anti-collision stuff where really this $200,000 supercar is 10 times safer than, you know, the Honda Odyssey that your neighbors have. You get pulled over speeding, it doesn't matter that that car is safer, you're a better driver, you're still going to get a ticket, all right? So it doesn't matter what sort of rationalization you guys make for making something not 508 compliant. None of that matters. It's still the law. So quit trying to get out of it. So what is your role? So your role as someone who is doing work for the government or work that is being paid by the government, you need to format all your documents and make sure everything is 508 compliant. Every Word, every PowerPoint, every PDF, every piece of e-learning, every website, every app, to the best of that technology's ability, you have to make that 508 compliant. Now, the great thing about making things 508 compliant is it's easy. I mean, it's really not difficult to do if you do it from the very beginning. If you do things from the very beginning, you spend the 5 minutes or so it's going to take to make something compliant, down the road, It's simple. If you wait until the last minute, the 11th hour, to make something 508 compliant, it is going to be a nightmare, usually for someone else, which is not a cool thing for you to do to someone else. But it's going to be a nightmare for someone else to go back behind you and make that 508 compliant. So do your job, obey the law, make things 508 compliant. It's not difficult, and I'm going to show you how. All right? Quit trying to weasel out of it. All right, how do you do it? Here's a secret. Google. Google it. If you don't know how to do something, you type into Google, how do I make X document 508 compliant? And chances are you're going to find some solutions to it. The whole 508 compliance thing, it's not a secret society. It's not something that the government's hiding from you. There are lots of government organizations and private organizations that offer paid and free training on 508 compliance. The Federal Acquisition Institute, so if you're going to be selling to the government or doing business with the government, they offer 508 compliance training. The United States Access Board, 508 compliance training, checklists, guidelines, section 508.gov. It's a government site. It has all that great information in it. So really, if you're interested, just Google it, because really you should be able to find that answer really quickly. Now we get to the fun part of what we can and can't do. 508 compliance, video. So let's talk about that. So videos and animations have to have synchronized captions. That's the little text that goes underneath the video that advances as the video or animation plays. It's really a good idea also to include a transcript. Realistically, you're already going to have a transcript because that's what's being used to generate your caption file. Additionally, it's not on this list, but you should also have an audio description file. Now these are a little bit more tricky. So because you could hear me and not really see what I'm talking about, picture this. You're watching the news or you're listening to the news and the newscaster says, oh my gosh, the zombie invasion has begun and ground zero is right here. If you're anywhere near right here, you're in trouble. You don't know where right here is, just judging by the audio. And that would be the transcripts also on the video. So at that point in your video, you're going to have a little audio file play and have someone's voice say, you know, terrified looking news reporter points at Albany, New York, or something like that, because then you get that little additional information that is important. When you have audio, if you're putting just audio on, say, like an e-learning course or on slides, you need to have a transcript for that as well. Graphics. This is one of those things that's sort of across the board no matter what you do. No matter what you do, you need to have alternate text for all your graphics. Now, what that would be is if, say, you have a picture of an apple on the corner of a table. The proper alt text for that should probably be apple sitting on a table. For your alt text, you don't need to have it say Macintosh apple covered in the glistening morning dew, perched precariously on the corner of a 1940s mahogany oak table. That's way too much information and not really relevant, unless the fact that it is that kind of apple or that kind of table or something is essential to the content and the context of what you're trying to teach. So just alt tags. You need to have alternate text for everything that you do, all your graphics. A lot of times we have non-informational images in our content. For example, if you look at the presentation right in front of you, there's this little blue geary thing at the top and this little blue bar that goes across the bottom. That's really just sort of a branding thing that has nothing to do with the content. For that, your users don't need to know what that is, so you could set that as an empty alt tag so it's essentially invisible to people. If you're doing e-learning, quizzes and exams, I highly recommend you just stick with multiple choice and true false. Most of the time, your e-learning tool, whatever you're using to make this e-learning, will be able to do those and make them 508 compliant with really little to no effort. With tables, remember to label your header rows. So your header row, that's traditionally going to be the row that goes all the way across the top of the table and has that main information in it. Charts and graphs. You need to provide alternate descriptions for all your charts and graphs, and especially your complex ones. If you're doing a chart or a graph that's like 27 pages long, first of all, what are you thinking? Because chances are very few people are actually ever going to look at that. Yes, your boss may say, Susan, great job. You just gave me a 200-page report. Fantastic. But no one's going to go through huge tables and charts. So try to avoid doing that when at all possible. If you have to have tables and charts, really the best way to have sort of a description for them is going to be bar graph showing the relation of onset of cancer to childhood smoking. Something like that. It just sort of describes in a sentence or two what this chart or graph is talking about. All right, what can't we do? So for back to e-learning, which we tend to do a lot of, drag and drop for quizzes and exams. Yes, hypothetically, you can program a drag and drop question to be 508 compliant, but it is going to be a pain and take a long time. And heaven forbid, 6 months later, you have to change that and someone else maybe behind you has to come in and edit that. That's going to be a big pain. Because think about it, how are you going to really, how is a user going to achieve a drag and drop with a mouse where you have to like click, move the mouse over and let go of the mouse button if they have mobility issues or, for example, they don't have arms? If they're just using a head wand to navigate, it's going to be very difficult for them to do drag and drop questions. Goes back to this fill in the blank. Fill in the blank, sure. I guess you can make those 508 compliant, but oh my gosh, those are going to be such a pain because you're going to have to deal with every misspelling of the answer, capitals, non-capitals. So just really try to stay away from those fill in the blank. Matching, once again, sort of the same as drag and drop. Programmatically, you could probably do it, but it's going to be a big hassle, and I'd advise you stay away from that. So once again, why can't we do these? A lot of times the program itself makes it really difficult to make the content 508 compliant. It makes sense to make stuff compliant for people with mobility disorders, ease of updates, timeliness, that sort of thing. What else should you avoid? These crazy complex tables charts that we just talked about, so no more huge multi-page tables and charts. Last, flashing or strobing animations. You can't have those because, as I think in the history has shown, they can provoke epileptic seizures. And there's actually some really interesting stories about, I think it was like a Pokemon cartoon on TV that happened over in Japan, and lots of kids had epileptic seizures at this one scene. It's kind of an interesting case study. All right, so examples. Let's go to some examples of good and bad versions of 508 compliant content. So before that, how do we test these? So me personally, the way I test something when it comes to me to be checked for 508 compliance is I will first open it up and look for color contrast issues. That is, make sure that the text and the background color are different enough. There are plenty of actually browser plugins that you could download for free that will check those, that will help you check those automatically. Next, what I do is I tend to keyboard navigate. Can I get through your entire document just using the keyboard? If it's a course, if it's a document, whatever, can I just sort of tab through it and get all the way through it? Will the tab key not get stuck in a flash animation somewhere that's on the page? Something like that. And last, I use JAWS. And JAWS is a paid-for program that what it does is it essentially will, when a page loads, JAWS sort of takes it almost like a snapshot of it the second it loads, and then a robotic voice, much less attractive than Siri, will then read the content on that page to you. So for example, if your screen doesn't work, or if you have a visual impairment, you'll be able to hear all the content that's on that page. So that's sort of how we do it. So let's start with a good example. And these will sort of be real quick. Here's just some quick little videos I did. I'll let it play just for a couple seconds.
Page has 11 links. Correct graphic CDC Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Graphic search field hit enter to search graphic A to Z index. CDC lab training. The CDC laboratory training branch left parent LTB right parent provides contemporary professional development programs. Training for timely transfer of new laboratory protocols.
I'm going to pause it right there real quick. So what you saw and what you heard is that the first thing it read was the first thing on the page, which was that CDC logo. And then the next thing that it read was the thing right next to it, which was the little search bar. And then it went into this CDC lab training area. Let's see if we could skip around and find some other good stuff in here. All right, we'll back up a little bit.
CDC LTB uses Train as a learning management system for course
so
management.
It gets through reading this
greater.
This first paragraph. Next, reads that heading. What would the next thing up? We'll read the logo. We'll get into that content. So you sort of see that it sort of reads through in a sensical order that really makes sense and helps the user really understand how it works. So now let me show you a bad example.
Graphic big blue green slightly oval rectangle thing that sits on the page. Link the National Laboratory Training Network left parent NLTN right parent link CDC Laboratory Training Learning Group on Train contact us : Centers for Disease Control and Prevention 1600 Clifton RD Atlanta got 303333800-CDC-info left parent 800-232-4636 right parent TTY : left parent 888 right parent 232-6348 link contact CDC.
But sort of see how this is sort of bouncing around. I mean, for example, it starts at the bottom. You know, this little green thing, it actually reads the background of this little green box, which is totally unnecessary. It reads this. It's sort of bouncing around. Notice it's not reading it from the top to bottom in a sensical fashion. So that's what you really encounter if you have a document, a file, a web page that's not 508 compliant. All right, so let's get back to our presentation. All right, so now let's get into handling these sort of three different types of document. Obviously, we could really go down the wormhole and get into, you know, how do you make an iPhone app 508 compliant? How do you make virtual reality 508 compliant? But we're just going to stick with these since these are pretty much the top three things that traditionally you're going to be dealing with making 508 compliant. So the great thing about these Microsoft products is that they have a built-in accessibility checker. And this built-in accessibility checker will really catch 95% of all your 508 compliance-related issues. The key thing to know for these Word documents and PowerPoint is fill out the document's properties. That's something that probably no one ever does. That's where you fill out the title, you fill out the author, you fill out the keywords, the description, that sort of thing. Fill out all that information. Next, you need to make sure you accept all comments, because seriously, if you're distributing documents that still have track changes turned on and comments on it, that's just bad form. Come on. Use your standard fonts, colors, and style elements. What that means is, look, I love the font where every single letter is like a different Disney character making the shape. Or maybe it's every letter is a gang sign, hands making gang symbols or something to spell out the words. That's all, ooh, that's super cool. But what you don't realize is that if you give that document to someone else, realistically that someone else is not going to have those silly fonts installed on their machine. And so what's going to happen is that document then is going to revert to sort of a basic font, like an Arial or a Times Roman or something like that. And when that happens, there's a really good possibility that it's going to mess up the formatting of your page. So stick with sort of standard fonts. Colors, once again, we can get into that whole color contrast thing. Don't put hot pink text over a white background. Style elements, I'm surprised how many people don't use or aren't aware of the style sort of ribbon that are in most of the Microsoft products where you could choose this is a title, this is a heading 1, this is a heading 2. You need to use those because that's what people that are using assistive technology use to navigate your courses. Once again, alt text, alt text, alt text. Make sure the header rows are active on all the tables. Links are active and descriptive. Okay, so here's a little thing about links. Most of the time, when you guys put a link in a document or a web page or e-learning or whatever, your link's going to be, hey, for more information, click here. And click here is going to be hyperlink. It's going to be blue and underlined. So that doesn't tell, that's not a descriptive hyperlink. That's not telling the person what that hyperlink is for, where's it going, anything like that. And actually, hypothetically, see these two links that I have right here. Let's see, right here and right here. Those two links, 508 compliant, sure. Could they be better? Yes. What would probably be better is if instead of the whole URL, it said, you know, HHS checklist for making Word 508 compliant. And that whole sort of little sentence phrase was hyperlinked. Because you want people to know where they're going when they're clicking on something. Next, Acrobat. Once again, Acrobat, and especially the new version of Acrobat, is awesome. It is super helpful for making documents 508 compliant. And the neat thing about it is when you run into a 508 issue, it will automatically sort of show you, hey, A, do you want me to fix it? And B, here's why you need to fix it. And C, here's, you know, a link to go to get more information on fixing it. So once again, do all those keywords, fill out all the properties of the file, accept all the changes, add alt text, header rows, charts, graphics, sort of really all the same things that we've talked about before. Make sure all the reading order is right, because in a lot of these documents you could see in PowerPoint, in Acrobat, how the reading order works and what's going to get read first, what's going to get read last. All right, and so now some links, just so you can see I'm not making this stuff up. Here's some checklists for Word, checklists for PowerPoint, checklists for PDF. We got websites. We got HHS has a great 508 sort of training page. 508.gov, the FAI, Federal Acquisition Institute, they have some great stuff there also. So once again, all this information is in the slide deck that you could download. I'm here to teach you to fish, man. So go out and fish. You don't need our help. You're smart. You know you can figure it out. Once again, Google, Google, Google. Use Google. It's a great tool, and you'll be able to find probably all the information you need from that. And going back to that sort of color contrast thing real quick, if you look at the little O that we have right here in Google, kind of hard to read. Not really good color contrast right there. So that might be potentially a 508 issue. All right, so now on to the demos. This is where we get crazy. Let's see if we can do this. So let's start with Microsoft Word. So you guys are seeing what I got right here. Let's open this up. All right, so here's an example of a Word document. All right, this is just a flyer for an exceptional multi-level family house. Look at that thing. I think it's gorgeous. Look at that brickwork. We're not going to get into talking about tongue and groove and all the mortises and all that stuff. But okay, here's just sort of a generic Word document that you may have something sort of similar to this. You know, you built it in Word, you're very happy. This could be like a report or something that you're sending off. So really the first thing to do is let's go back to these titles. Remember I said a lot of people don't use the styles ribbon. So what that is this thing right here. And you see right here we have title, heading 1, heading 2, that sort of thing. What headings are traditionally used for, either on websites or in documents, are you could actually use them to navigate. So if you think about a website, say you go to ESPN, excuse me, on the homepage of ESPN, you have an area that says, you know, auto racing, football, baseball, basketball, mixed martial arts, golf, whatever, and then under each one of those categories there's news stories. So if you're not interested, you're only interested in, say, golf, using the headings, you could sort of jump from heading to heading until you hit that golf heading and sort of make it so you don't have to listen to the screen reader read all the rest of the content on the page until it gets to the stuff you're interested in. So on this thing, we want to make sure that this, because this seems like a title, right? That seems like the title of the page. So what we're going to do is we are going to take it, we're going to right click on it. Nope, we're not going to right click on that. We're going to right click on title and say update title to match selection. And so what that's going to do is it's going to say, okay, now look, this is a title. So when a screen reader comes to the page, they're going to know that's a title. Same for this. Let's say let's make this another heading that someone might want to jump down to. So we're going to say you could either click on that and look, it's going to change to sort of the default thing, but you don't want that. What you're going to do is we're going to select that text. We're going to right click on it and say update heading 1 to match selection. Now, if we click on the text, we see heading 1. Click on the text up here. Oh, look, it's the title. So that's sort of one way that you sort of use the style and format area to help with compliance. But really, the super secret is all you do, go to File, under Inspect Document, click Check for Issues, and look at this, Check Accessibility. Oh, it's almost like the computer does it for you. But what do we got here? We got errors. So there's two things that come up, is you got warnings and errors. Errors are the things that you really need to check. Warnings are things that you just sort of need to be aware of, but you don't necessarily have to fix, but it's just a good thing to be aware of. So look, lots of missing alt text. Okay, so I'm guessing this picture right here doesn't have alt text. So let's just click on this picture. The way you actually see what the alt text for these images are is you're going to right click on it, say Format Picture. Then right here, this little dingle hopper thing right there, there's a little checkbox underneath it that says alt text. Look what we got here. There's the description. That's going to be your alt text right there. And the reason that it looks like that is a lot of times when you drop images in, it will take metadata from the image or even the image's file name and sometimes drop it in as alt text, which this alt text is not good, right? So what should we call this? We'll just say image. You don't even have to say image. You could just say beautiful house. We'll just say beautiful house. That's pretty much, that's good. All right, wonderful. Before we look at all these alt texts, let's just make sure the rest of the alt text is good. Let's look at this little thing right there. Oh, what do we have here? The description, leaf. Yeah, you could say leaf, logo, company logo, something like that. But that's all right. So let's go into the rest of these alt texts. The neat thing about Word is when you click on each one of these errors, it will highlight the area in the document where there's an issue. So you can sort of see that it's all these little colored rectangles that have been made don't have alt text on them, right? And watch, well, let me show you what happens when you fix something. So we got rectangle 1. Here's this little rectangle. We could just say, really, we don't want any alt text on this because it's a decorative image, but in Word, it won't let you do that. So we could just say, you know, gray box. And notice, it disappears from up there. If it's not there, there you go, right there. So you're going to go through and sort of add alt text on a lot of these. And really, once you're done, you're going to print it as an Acrobat. But in terms of Word, it's really open up the accessibility checker, deal with all the errors that are there. All right. So let's look at PowerPoint. PowerPoint's always fun, right? That's pretty much what I think a lot of you people are going to be working with. All right, here we go. Here's a typical PowerPoint presentation. You got pictures, titles, content. Oh yes, we got a chart here. We got a table here, a little smart art object, and this usually, you know, hey, thank you for very much. So once again, let's go to File, Check for Issues, Check Accessibility, and look at what we got here. We got 3 different sets of errors. We got missing alt text. We have no header row is specified, so that's probably in that table. Ooh, and we have a missing slide title. So let's go deal with these first. So what do we got here? We got, okay, so that's a guy pumping iron. So let's right click on that. Oh, right click on the image, go to Format Picture, Alt Text. Now for your alt text, you're going to be tempted to put it in the title area, but you need to put your alt text in this description area, right? So this is just man lifting weights. All right, perfect. And notice how as I'm adding alt text, they're disappearing from this error list. So what do we got here? Apple and a tape measure, right? Apple and a measuring tape. All right, next. You sort of see what's going on, right? People running. I could really sort of go through all these. You know, that would be sunset. All right, so we got this placeholder. Here's a great place where we go in and we add a description for this chart. So we could say, chart showing the difference in whatever and whatever. You just have, a sentence or two description of what that chart is describing. All right, next we'll say no header row specified. So the neat thing about, once again, all these Microsoft tools is, let's shrink this up a little bit. So here's this top one, that's going to be your header row, right? That's sort of the area where you have the titles and everything else below it sort of fall underneath that. So you're going to highlight that part of the table, those cells. Underneath this table tools, you go to design, and look at this, header row. And let's watch what happens when we click on header row. Boom, gone. Beautiful, right? So there, we're good on that one. All right, next, missing slide title. Okay, so this is a huge one that we encounter. An interesting way of being able to see how PowerPoint will be read by screen readers is if you go to the View, Outline View. And you can see, look at this. We have title and kind of all the text that's on the PowerPoint slide also shows up in the Outline View. Same with this one, right? All this is all there. But look at page number 3. We have a bunch of content there, but it's not showing up there. Why? Because the person who created this PowerPoint probably did what everyone else, what a lot of you folks do, is when you want to put content in a page, you just, you go insert, you're going to insert a text box. Maybe you just go in and, let's see, maybe you just take this text, you say, okay, I want another text box in here. And so you just paste another text box and put it right there and resize it like that, right? Nothing's in there. The reason why, under View, this Slide Master, remember these are all the different layouts that come with this template in PowerPoint. You need to use these layouts in order to add content if you want it to be read by screen readers properly. So for this, what we might want to do to fix this is we'll create a new slide, and we'll do we'll do a title and 2 points of contact, right? We'll go back to this one. All right, so here's this text, and copy it, paste it into this little title area, and notice, look, it's all showing up there. I'm going to put this copy, paste, oops, cancel, we don't want to add a chart. So the moral of this story is use these slide layouts. These slide layouts, they're not there just sort of annoy you, say, hey, you can only do 2 columns, not 3. They're there to make things actually more accessible and more compliant. And if you want to, going into the Slide Master, you can easily create new ones with more columns that sort of will match what you want it to do. So last, let's go back into this inspect presentation. We're going to check accessibility. All right, we got that slide title. Remember, that was gone from that one, but look, it's here in that one. So that's sort of just real quick on how to do the make a PowerPoint document 508 compliant. Last, let's go to, what is it? Arrange selection pane. So the neat thing about the selection pane is that it will show you how stuff gets read, the order in which something gets read. But it gets read in the selection pane, which is right here, from the bottom to the top. So the first thing that's read is whatever's on the bottom. So if you see here, all right, first it's going to read the title, then it's going to read that picture, then that picture, then that picture, and then end with the subtitle. Pretty good, but really we probably would want to have the subtitle get read after the title, right? So we're just going to click on that subtitle, move it down, and look at that. First thing that gets read, second thing that gets read. Same thing with all these things. You can see, all right, title gets read, that content gets read. Title gets read. So that's how you sort of arrange stuff within PowerPoint to determine the reading order. Close that. And last, let's open up a PDF. Now this was a PDF that I just sort of looked online and tried to find something that was not 508 compliant, which surprisingly ended up being kind of tough. So kudos, rest of the world. This company also had the same document that was 508 compliant, so I'm not knocking them at all. So here's sort of a traditional, you might be sending this may be a report or something that you're presenting. You know, typical logo, text, image, text boxes. All right, you know, just sort of a standard PDF, right? So the neat thing, once again, with PDF is there's this tools, and there's this accessibility thing right here. So something to note about this accessibility thing, it's only available on the full version of Acrobat. If you just have the free version of Acrobat, sorry, it's not in there. So you will have to get the full version if you want to really get into all these tools. So all I have to do is run a full check. So you click on full check. We're going to start checking this thing. And ooh, look what we got over here. We got a bunch of issues with this document. Okay, so first, tagged PDF failed. That means that this PDF was not tagged when it was published. So we could fix that in like a one-click thing. Language hasn't been listed. The title hasn't been listed. Let's look at this page, some of this content. Tab order on some of these pages has failed. What else? Oh, missing a lot of alt text. Oh, we got tables that don't have proper rows and headings, and you know, there's lots of issues in this, right? And this may be the sort of thing that if you saw, you'd go, uh-oh, we're hosed, we're in trouble. But the great thing you could do about it is, let's go back, we'll do another full check just to get back to the top of this, is we could right click on right where it says tag PDF. Look at this. Don't you wish more programs just had a button that said fix? I mean, I do. My wife does for me. All right, so you click fix, and what it does right now is it's going through this PDF and sort of making decisions and determining, oh, okay, this is a table. Here's how it should probably be formatted. Oh, there's an image. Let's see if we could find the alt text in somewhere in the meta file for the document. And we see that, look at that, it cleared up a whole bunch of the stuff, right? So start with the primary language. So let's, once again, right click, say fix, language. We're going to say this is English. We say OK. Bada bing, green check mark. Title, we don't have a title on that. Let's fix that. Now, sometimes when you do that, when you right click and do the title, it will bring up like a little text box that says, OK, please enter the title, please enter the author. But what happened here is that information was already somewhere buried inside this PDF, and it was able to generate that automatically. Let's look, what else? Alt text, uh-oh, we're missing alt text. All right, so we got this image right here. What do we got? Got a woman working on a tablet, right? So we got to add alt text to that, right? So let's right click on that. We'll say fix. Oh, I love that fix. So alt text, we could just say, looks like maybe a doctor working on a tablet computer. Oh, right, great. Save and close, boom, gone. All right, next, what do we got here? Ooh, we got this guy, IT dude, very happy. Lots of people who are looking at computers and images seem very happy. All right, so let's fix this. Let's pretend that this guy has nothing to do with the content. And really, none of these images really have anything to do with the content. So we could just click decorative figure. And when you click decorative figure, what that means is that when a screen reader's reading, it's going to read text, 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 and then it'll say image, doctor looking at a computer, image, man looking at a computer, image. And that stuff isn't really super necessary for the context of what you have. So you can click that decorative figure and it will get rid of it. It will not read it anymore. Next, we've got a nurse. We got a nurse? No, we got a mom. So sort of really the same thing that happens here is you sort of go through it. You say fix. Woman looking at computer, that sort of thing. So, but notice, when I change that guy on the computer to a decorative figure, it came up with this other elements alternate text. Don't freak out. There's an easy way to fix that. That's something that sort of Acrobat does by default. You're going to right click on it. We're going to show this in the tags panel. Now, the mysterious tags panel is this panel right here. Sort of shows every little character, text box, item that's going to be in your PDF. So we're going to just simply right click on it. Say properties. We're going to turn it into, where is it? Oh, no, that's not what we're going to do. Where is it? Hold on, let's go back to this. There's my accessibility thing. Oops. Bum, bum, bum. All right, so let's do this. Let's explain what the problem is. We sort of troubleshoot that. All right, look at this. So, look at this. This was Googling. This is Googling a problem. So we're going to go to the tags, remove the alt text from the object properties. I always forget to do that. So we're just going to go like this. We're going to go show in tags panel. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, it's falling apart now. Oh, maybe showing content panel, sorry. Oh well, we'll just forget that never happened. All right, what else do we got here? We'll fix these alt tags real quick. Computer. Computer. All right, now why is this not image properties? Let's see, advanced, nope. All right, so let's go back to that tags panel. This image right here. Go to properties. Shouldn't have any alternate text, okay. I don't know what I did on that. I messed that up somehow. We'll see. All right, so we got 10 minutes left. I'm going to go kick myself back into Connect so I can see if there's any questions. Do we have any questions for me on this? Because really, I'm not an expert. I just do this stuff a lot. And when I run into problems, I Google it. I go to one of the many government sponsored websites. I look up the directions, and I fixed it. I think the key thing that I really want to sort of get through to everyone is that if you do this 508 stuff from the beginning, it is really not an issue.
So we have our first question from Virginia Watson. Is there any situation where 508 compliance would not need to be done for content on the CDC website?
I can't, Virginia, I can't see, I don't know of any situation. Because once again, you're talking about a government website, and everything that the government does has to be 508 compliant, especially if it's pointed at the public. Maybe a case could be made that if you had a document that was password protected and you knew that only 2 people could get at that, and you knew those people didn't have disabilities, maybe. But actually, as I'm saying that, that's not true, because you don't know. You never know. People don't have to self-identify as having a disability. So really, I'm going to say no. There's no reason, no situation.
Thank you, Joe. We have another question from Sandy 2. How do you enter a blank alt text?
So really, if you're doing web stuff, the easiest thing is you could just, you could say null, N-U-L-L. Yeah, that's really, that's the easiest way to do it, and it'll skip right over that.
We have another question from V. Johnson. If we use SurveyMonkey, would the standard default template be the best one to use related to 508?
So SurveyMonkey, I'm not sure. That's probably going to have to be a question for SurveyMonkey. Usually the default templates are going to be better. We use Lectora, for example, and in Lectora there's actually, for e-learning courses, there's a checkbox that you check that says, hey, make this course accessible, 508 compliant type of material. And when you do that, it removes a lot of the options for multiple choice questions. It gives you a default video player skin. It sort of removes a lot of the bells and whistles that are not 508 compliant. So in the SurveyMonkey question, probably, but that's really going to have to be a question for SurveyMonkey. But an easy way to test it, open it up in Internet Explorer or Chrome or something, and just start hitting the tab key and see what happens. See if you could tab through, and it tabs through in the right order. That's sort of a really easy, quick way to check.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. As we close our webinar today, please listen to the following information regarding obtaining CEUs, the future archive webinar for this activity, and additional training opportunities. Thank you again for participating in today's webinar.